What's up, Dragon Brood? With Standard being so large and there being so many sets available, I think sometimes we just forget some of the cool cards that are still available that would actually be really good on the ladder when you're playing on Arena. So we're going to talk about 10 cards today that you probably overlooked or maybe even forgot about. We're going to start with Trygon Predator, because I've had this in maybe 2 or 3 decks and it's turned out to be pretty good. It's a 2/3 flyer, so that's already solid. And when it connects, you get to destroy an artifact or enchantment, which is great. I think people just forget this exists because there's a few decks where this could be played right now. And it actually works against most matchups, right? Against even the burn decks where they don't have necessarily a lot of artifacts or enchantments, though some do play Sheltered by Ghost. It's very possible that you can just block a slick shot if you need to, right? That's reasonable. But also against decks like the synthesizer decks that are playing all the artifacts, or any of the mono white token enchantment type decks. Like, there's a lot of decks that this is actually just solid against on the ladder. Now, again, I don't think all these necessarily should be showing up in best of 3, but in best of 1, there's quite a few matchups where all of these cards will probably shine on some level. But yeah, if you haven't played with Trygon Predator in a minute, go give it a look. Another fun card I want to mention is Defend the Rider. Like, this is one of those cards that I think more people should be playing because we've played other versions of this, right? And I think even now people like playing Snakeskin Veil because it gives you the +1/+1 counter. But this actually makes it to where you can give something indestructible and hexproof. We don't have many cards in Standard that do that right now. And for 1 mana, it's actually pretty good. And on the rare occasion, you might just make a 1/1 to either maybe put more counters on it. Let's say if you have an Ouroboros, for example, but maybe you just want to throw off your opponent's combat math and you want to have another blocker. There's lots of cool things you could do with this, and it's actually really cheap. I mean, even if you want to play these in paper, they don't cost anything. But it's just an all-around useful card. It works in all types of creature decks, obviously, and for 1 green mana, you don't have to have a huge investment to make this card work. What I like about it is you don't even really need a particular type of deck, just a way to defend your creatures. And if you're playing best of 3, this is a really easy sideboard card if you're worried about decks with lots of spot removal or lots of sweepers. Charming Scoundrel is another cool card that I think over time we've gotten away from, but it actually fills a few different roles, right? If you need a discard outlet, it does that, right? You need to generate treasure, it does that. I guess if you just need a 2/2 instead of a 1/1, it's possible to be that. But sometimes you just need to draw a card, and if you top deck this, well, then you don't have anything to discard, you just draw. So it does a lot of cool stuff. And I think there's some decks that are just trying to be aggressive that maybe want to splash another color, or in the case that you have something happens to be a multicolor humans deck, like this is a reasonable filler for some other cards you may not have. Now, I don't think this is a case of a card you're always going to go to when deck building, but I do think it can fill a role in some decks that people might have forgotten about. For example, if you're playing a deck that wants to be reanimating stuff, it's very possible you play this on turn 2, you can discard something to your graveyard. Awesome, now you have something there to get. Or if you're a little light on mana, you just generate the treasure, and then on turn 3, you're able to reanimate something, potentially, right? So there's a few different things you can do with this, which are actually really cool. So another card that over time we've played with less and less, but it still has a home in some spots. Okay, this next one's kind of a newer one. It's Morland, Devourer of Spiders, or Lewis, Pompous Pillager, right? Now, this card, I'm starting to see it getting some more play, and admittedly, it's only been out for, what, 4 weeks or so? But it's actually way better than I think we're giving it credit for. I mean, it's always at a minimum going to be a 2-mana 2/1 with lifelink, and that's reasonable and passable in a lot of aggressive decks. But then, having a creature that you can just drain your opponent's life total with is actually pretty awesome. And it can also just be a big body as it scales cleanly, right? Every mana over 2 just makes your creature 1/1 bigger and drains your opponent for 1. So yeah, this card should be played way more than it is. Like, even in the mono black aggro decks, I think it's very possible to play 2 or 3 of these just as a late game deal 3 to your opponent or deal 4 to your opponent, right? Or way late game, it's just a winner if you top deck it. But it also gives you a bit of life gain against the red decks. Like, it's doing a few different things. And it's one of the cards, I think, for as much as the Spider-Man set has been lambasted, let's say, I think it's very possible that there are a lot of cards like this that, as we go on in Standard, are going to be seeing more play that are just being overlooked because of the set they happen to be in. Speaking of which, another card from Spider-Man is Secret Identity. This card has actually turned out to be excellent. And I've played this in a couple of different decks already, and it's earned its keep for sure. It's a 1 mana thing that either is going to protect your creature by turning it into a 1/1 and giving it hexproof, or it's going to turn your thing into a 3/4, and that's awesome. And it also gets flying and vigilance. Like, you're getting a lot of options for just 1 blue mana out of this card. Also remember that it's target creature you control, so you can't use it on your opponent's stuff. But that's totally fine, right? Your goal is either to protect something or to help something get by. But if you're playing any type of Simic aggro deck or an Izzet spells deck or anything like that, like, this can fit into either of those deck types. But pretty much any aggressive thing or something that's creature based that's playing a reasonable number of spells should probably at least be looking at this card as an option, because it's actually surprisingly useful for just 1 mana. Ah, yes, Immersturm Predator, the 4 mana 3/3 flying vampire dragon. Weird creature types, but still a cool card. Well, the good thing about this is it's just a hard to kill creature because you can sacrifice something and obviously give it indestructible. But also, every time this becomes tapped, you can remove stuff from the graveyard, or from a graveyard, I should say, which is important right now in Standard, especially in Best of One. There's so many of the Reanimator decks running around that this is a totally reasonable card to have. It's a good, useful creature in general, especially against, say, like the Boros burn decks or whatnot, giving you a flyer to block the slick shot, or just something your opponent can't easily punch past. But in those matchups where you just want to keep attacking, you could still remove key cards from your opponent's graveyard and just make it a little more difficult on them. And I think people forgot about this card because, like so many things that happen to have showed up in Foundations, that is a set that just keeps on giving. I think so many cards, kind of like we were talking about with the Trygon Predator, are just hiding out in that set, and people have forgotten about it. And I think this is right there on that list. Really good card, definitely overlooked, probably because, there's still the whatever the 2/4 of Aclazats and all that other stuff that are actually still being played right now at the same cost, so I get it. But if you're trying to fill some metagame gaps and maybe you don't have those other cards, this is one I would keep an eye on for some filler. This is another one that I love, but Repulsive Mutation. It's X green blue, and there's some quirkiness about this card. It's an instant, and you can put X counters onto a creature you control. However, then you can also counter a spell, and the opponent or the owner of the spell has to pay X, where X is equal to the power of the creature you targeted. Now, actually, not even that. It's of the greatest among the creatures you control, which I guess in some cases you could put the counters on a creature and use the power of something else to counter things. What I like about this, though, is that it can be used aggressively if you just want to pump something in combat or make a funky block to take down your opponent's best creature. Totally reasonable. But it also gives that aggressive spell an opportunity to be defensive, which you don't get very often when you're playing aggro decks. And again, this is a card that's kind of forgotten about, so your opponents never really see it coming. I will say this about the card, though. If you are going to play it, be aware that it does have multiple targets, right? You have to target once for the creature you want to put counters on. And you can declare X as 0, and then it still looks for the largest power among your creatures. But then you also still have to target the spell that's on the stack before it all resolves. So you have to be real careful there. The first couple of times I use it, I ruined it and cost myself a game. So learn from my mistakes. Now, I'm also pretty guilty on underplaying Requisition Raid, and honestly, it fits a lot of different builds, right? Maybe you want to just have a little bit of security to destroy an artifact or an enchantment, right? In that case, it's kind of the same cost as a disenchant that's not instant speed. And that's okay, not great. However, for 1 more mana, you could destroy both an artifact and an enchantment, which is really good. But you also get the option of putting +1/+1 counters on all your creatures. So then it gets that extra level of maybe it can go into a +1/+1 counters deck. Or just some deck that's wanting to be aggressive with a bunch of tokens, so your tokens can be larger. But having a catch-all spell that lets you destroy artifacts or enchantments kind of unconditionally, except for being a sorcery, is actually more than reasonable on its own. But also having the option that, let's say you're playing against a deck that doesn't have a bunch of those permanent types, you can just pump your team? Sure. Because one of the problems when you include these types of cards in your deck is sometimes you run into, say, the control deck that's just not playing any permanents, or whatever the case is, right? Some aggro player that's just playing instants and creatures. Well, then you would like to have something to do with that card, and this is able to do that. Again, I don't think it necessarily needs to be in every single deck, but it's worth considering if you're already in white and looking for some flexible options to deal with some difficult permanents. Now, Phoenix Down is a little bit different in the sense that I think people know it exists, but I think they overlook it. And I think because generally when we get cards like this, they tend to be, return the creature to your hand or can only be played as a sorcery or whatever. This card doesn't have any of those restrictions. It's a 1 mana artifact, and then for 1 and a white, you can tap it, exile this, and then you get your choice of two things. You either return a creature with mana value 4 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped, or you get to exile a skeleton, spirit, or zombie. Now, I will say, against the mono black decks, there are times you get to get rid of a skeleton or a zombie, so that's actually okay. Like, sometimes it happens, but not that often. But honestly, being able to return so many things that are 4 or less is great. Late in the game, you get a flyer back, or the deck that we've used it in the most is whenever you're playing the green-white Gear Hulk, you can actually just return the Gear Hulk, and then you can go search for 2 more things, one of them even being a Phoenix Down if you want. Bright Glass Gear Hulk is what I was thinking of there. Just wanted to put that name in the video. But even that aside, the fact that you can use this at instant speed is great, right? Your opponent can sweep the board. During their end step, you get back one of the things that just got wiped away, right? There's a lot of little uses with this card, and I'm kind of surprised we don't see more of it. Again, I don't think you need to play 4 of, or really many of these cards we've talked about in the video so far. You don't need 4 of them, but even just 1 or 2 copies sometimes can be really nice to draw and give you a backup option. Yeah, and you've watched the channel this season, you will know that this was easily going to be my #1 card on the list, but it's Intrepid Paleontologist. I mean, this card literally just does so much stuff for so many decks, right? Right now, if you're playing anything with green that's playing multiple colors, this is obviously going to have benefits because it taps for mana of any color. But more often than not, it's giving you the ability to remove graveyard things without any really restriction, right? It's 2 mana, but it's colorless, so you can pay whatever, and don't forget that it can also tap for itself to use it, so you really only need this and 1 other open mana. But again, like we mentioned before in the video, there's so many graveyard decks running around the standard best of 1 ladder that this card has come in handy so many times, right? You can use it against the VV Cauldron decks. You can use it against the new, Cavaro, or the, the Supreme Spider-Man thing that's copying stuff in the graveyard. It's good against that. It's good against any types of, any graveyard manipulation, reanimator decks, right? It just is good against so much stuff. Can't say enough about this card. I think it's criminally underplayed. And what I like about it is, even if you're playing a more aggressive deck or mid-rangey thing, you don't have to play graveyard-specific cards and take away your aggression. This is a fine 2/2 body that has significant upside. It can help you ramp, but it's also a bit of defense if you need it. So, great card that I think more people should probably be playing. Now, I know I just listed 10 cards, and there's going to be differing opinions. Let me know if you think I'm crazy or any of these cards you would never play with, though I think you should be playing with a lot of them, and we've played with them in videos on this channel. But are there other cool cards that you think should have been on my list or you were expecting to see that aren't? I'd be curious what y'all have. But yeah, as always, like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Do the things that make the dings. Watch the next video because it always helps, and YouTube says you're going to like it. But that's all I have you for now. We'll see you next time.